ja proponuję, żebyśmy jeszcze chwilę poczekali, bo tutaj cały czas osoby dochodzą, łączą się.
We still have people joining us and connecting, so we will be starting in a few minutes. In the meantime, you can let us know where you are listening to us from, and we can check if the chat is working all right. And you can also tell us something about your expectations about this meeting.
Ja tylko pokażę coś, bo przyniosłem też analogowe.
And let me also show you something. I have brought some analog gadgets, even though we will be talking about digital things. But these are these nice Minecraft mascots. You can get them from Allegro, for example. So it's really cool that you start your childhood passions in computer games, but then that moves into the real world. So I'll put them in the background to have something nice in the picture.
Fantastycznie. Marcin, nie tylko maskotki, ale wiem, że młodzi ludzie mają i koszulki, i spodnie, i bluzy.
No pewnie, oczywiście.
I gadżety szkolne, więc utożsamiają się jak najbardziej z grami.
All these gadgets are very much connected with computer games, and it's great that they bring them over to the real analog world. We have greetings from Warsaw on chats. Do let us know where you're from, where you're tuning in to this meeting from. From me, very warm greetings from Wielkopolska. Marcin from Warsaw, Hubert from Warsaw as well. Apparently, Gdynia is with us too. Right, Marta, tuning in from Gdynia. It's a pleasure to have you. I love the Tri-City in the north. Now, I've been thinking, we're not starting yet, but something I've thought about. You said something that I always say, that there's the virtual world and the real world, and things move between the one and the other. But I think this is maybe our opinion of people who are a little bit older. For the young people, I don't think they understand it like that. I think that it's the same thing. It's just a tool for communication. And I think maybe we should switch to this new way of thinking, that is the same thing expressed in two different ways. But I'll shut up now. I don't want to be talking about these important things. I'm a radio journalist, and sometimes some of the best conversations are when the music is playing. So the audience is listening to the music, and in the background, we're having great conversations. But I'll shut up now. I think we can be starting now. Let me welcome everyone, and let me start. Good evening. A very warm welcome to everyone who's watching us, or maybe it's good morning. Maybe some of you will be watching us not in real time, but later, because this webinar will be available to be seen online. I would encourage everyone to be with us right now, because you'll have a great chance and a great opportunity to interact with our hosts. So, good evening. It's great to see you're telling us where you're from. And do keep commenting, keep reacting, and keep asking questions. Later on, there will be a Q&A session at the end of this webinar. And we'll be very happy to collect these questions for you. Before I give the floor to Marcin and Zyta, let me just say that this webinar is organized as part of our program called Be Internet Awesome. The program is targeted at teachers, educators, and parents. The program is international, and that's why we've got people joining us from different European partner countries. And I would encourage them to select the English interpretation channel on Zoom. If you go to the bottom of the screen, there's a little globe. You can click on it and select the language of interpretation in which you want to listen to it. We have been joined by Krzysztof and Mateusz, who will be interpreting this conversation live for you. Now, moving on to our hosts. It's a great pleasure for me to introduce them. We'll be talking about how computer games impact a child's development. We have Zyta Czechowska, a trainer of social skills and a great fan of modern technology, special pedagogist, and she's the Teacher of the Year 2019. Hello, Zyta. Hi, hello. And we have Marcin Perfuński with us. He's a blogger, a journalist, and he's the husband and the father, and he runs Super Dad, Super Tata, a blog online. Marcin is happy to share his experiences, and he's very happy to have a family with many children. Hi, Marcin. Hello, everyone. During the meeting, we'll try to talk about examples of computer games that impact our cognitive capabilities like memory, like problem solving, attention, and others. And our hosts will tell us if books really are better than computer games. And also, we'll talk about how computer games impact the young people and their learning processes. We'll also talk about how you, as a parent, can be present there and be there for the child as he or she discovers new things while playing computer games. Let me now give the floor to Zyta and Marcin, and I wish everyone a very good meeting, and hopefully we'll learn more about how children learn better thanks to computer games. Now, we wouldn't like for this to be just us talking and our audience listening and drinking coffee, which I have with me as well. So I would like to activate our audience first. And my question is, what is your experience of computer games? We all used to be young, and at some point, computers appeared and computer games appeared. Some of us became more involved in this world of games, and maybe there are some games that you still remember fondly, or maybe you go to retro games website online and play those games for free. How about you tell us in chats what games you used to love? I still have some of those games. I actually bought them, the original copies, and I wanted to show them to my daughters. These days, they don't look that good anymore. They're very pixelated. But do let us know what computer games were most important for you. And also, maybe you have seen some impact of those games on what you can do these days. Maybe a strategic game resulted in you studying management. Maybe you are managers or HR managers because you played Settlers in the past. So do let us know what titles, what computer games you liked in the past. Zyta, what about you? Do you have some games that you spend sleepless nights playing? Games that were important and have helped shape who you are now. Now, you might be surprised, Marcin, but I've never played computer games. When I was in primary school, as a child, I was not interested in games at all. First of all, sadly, I didn't have a computer at home or any other equipment. I come from a family of many children, and we couldn't afford any equipment of that sort. I remember we played computer games at some cousins of ours or other members of the family, and they were games like Mario Bros, Sims. I'm not sure if your children played Sims, but my Julia, who's now 22, when she was a child, she started playing Sims with her friends. So those were the games we bought for them. But I remember when we were adults, we played together online something called a virtual island. It was about creating your virtual family, and then you would earn money in-game, and you were able to buy houses, cars, and other types of property. And you had to overcome all sorts of difficulties and think strategically, overcome all sorts of obstacles in our way. And that was a web-based game, and you needed some properly good gear for the game to run smoothly and good bandwidth, which wasn't taken for granted 20 or 18 years ago, but we all loved that game. So that's probably the first virtual game where you would be in touch with people from all over the world. You were able to chat with them, to get to know them, get in all sorts of relationships. And especially those who spoke English well, they were able to practice their English as well. To be honest, we had some fighting at home because of that, because we only had a single computer and we all wanted to play the game. And the computer was always being occupied by me. In the meantime, Wolfenstein appeared in chats, and that's a game I remember from my youth. The first-person shooter, an FPS game. So these were definitely games that we loved. I remember listening an audio book about the authors of those games, because it's quite interesting that, you know, the first people who came up with this idea and thought people might like it, Wolfenstein, Doom, Quake, all these shooters, and I think our parents were probably going gray-haired because, you know, there is my child running around killing people. But I loved those games. It was great to get away from it all. Now, something that was attractive to me in particular was that those games showed in a very good way a goods distribution path. It's a very wise term, but what it basically meant in a game like Settlers, you were building a country from scratch. And I spent months on end developing different countries with different tribes. So from the point of view of an adult and a parent, that may have been one of the most important experiences I had in terms of learning how a country operates. And there are so many different connections that are important that you need to take care of and make sure that no one is lacking anything. So I think, and looking back at it, I think they developed me. But there are other games that I don't think were that good or wouldn't be too good for my children today, like Carmageddon. It was about car racing, street racing, and there was an option where people would be walking into the street and you would run them over. Now, I don't think it had any negative impact on me. I knew it was a game, and the moment you turn off the computer, that's it. I can see some more titles. StarCraft, Prince of Persia. Yes, that was a very important game. Now keep them coming in, keep them appearing in the chat window. Oh, here we have a very important thing that we will be revisiting later. Some games that were not translated into Polish, the children had to start learning English, and suddenly it turned out that they could, and they liked it. So games made them learn English.
Ja tylko tak żartobliwie, bo też pojawiło się na czacie, że ktoś...
Someone mentioned mushroom picking, a mushroom picking game. I suppose many of us played that game when we were children. But to go back to what you said before, when we move on to talking about the impact of computer games on people, I would like to go back to the linguistic skills and improving your English through computer games, because I've got something to say about it, and thanks to Edita, who mentioned it in the chat window. Now, what I found very important, whenever I came to different conferences, and that was several years ago, but it went on and on.
Whenever I
was a number of conferences
and
these were conferences for parents, to make this
specific,
clear.
And they were talking about
whenever
games
appeared as a topic, it was always a negative thing.
So what do you
so
do
the thing
to
was, what do we do
that
to make our children play less? How do we set up limits on computer gaming?
Games?
And that made me
and this was
worried
related to anxiety, and I will elaborate later.
Now, another thread that kept appearing,
which I think we
all have seen it,
is that
when the topic of computer games and children appears in mainstream media, is usually in a negative light. When it makes headlines, it's always because something bad happened, and we don't often get news about something good that was the result of a computer game, or that a computer game has positive impact on a child. So that's when I sort of rebelled. I decided I didn't want to talk about games like that anymore, because I had some very positive experiences with games in the past when I was a child. And I started exploring this topic, and it turned out that this attitude that the games are just a bad thing for a child is wrong. Yes, games can be bad, but not by their nature. So I started exploring this topic, and as a result, I've written the article which has appeared on Szkoła z Klasą, School with Class website. I'll post the link to it in a moment. And I wrote about the positive impact of games on education. Now a question to Zyta and to all of you. Why is it the case that whenever the topic of games is brought up, today's parents, who used to be computer gamers in the past themselves, suddenly start worrying, and they said, we've got to do something about it, it's a big problem. And they seem to have forgotten that they used to play computer games. So why is this the case? Is this some sort of group forgetfulness, or do we just start playing the role of a parent or a teacher or educator, and we change our point of view? This is a question mark. What do you think about this, Zyta?
Odpowiedziałeś na to pytanie i myślę, że w ogóle ten temat należy potraktować szerzej, bo...
I think you have already replied to this question. We need to approach this subject in a more general way. In this book, How Not to Lose Your Child Online, we wrote that the new technology is a scapegoat blamed for all the difficulties in education, raising kids, family, emotion. All that was attributed to new technology. This is because we are not familiar with it, we're afraid, and what is difficult, what you don't know, what you need to get to know is a source of fear, anxiety, and it's easiest, it's safest to negate it. And I think it's similar with computer games, because we succumb to social pressure when you hear on the media that some game causes a negative impact because a child, after playing it for some time, becomes aggressive, or the child spends too much time online, or they get isolated from peers. And parents don't think about why it happens, how much time the child spent in front of the computer to get to this state. There is some pressure, and there are some messages that are not really tested. And I think that's the key problem that I think leads to the fact that games are perceived in this negative way. And another reason is that we don't really know what games can do in a young person's life and how they influence their development. And this webinar is actually an opportunity to talk about it, how games influence human development. Another aspect is that parents don't see the need to investigate the topic of games. They don't really want to be part of this virtual world and this game space that their kids are so interested in and excited about. And if parents actually wanted to find out why games are so great for their kids, why kids spend so much time playing, they would understand the motivation behind playing games, and they would understand how games can influence the development of children. Following on, I'd like to say that adults perceive games as entertainment. We don't really consider the fact that there are different kinds of games. You can have computer games, like movies, like music. They are genres. There are different kinds of games that you can sort by different criteria. Simulators, for example, are one kind of games that reflect actual life in virtual world. You can have a driving simulator or an aircraft simulator, or there are games where you can build cities or virtual spaces. You have strategy games, which require our students, our kids, fantastic strategic skills, commanding military units, or giving orders to big groups of people. You can also have shooters. You can have platform games. You can have musical games that result in kids being in a great mood because it's real fun, it's joy. Kids can immerse in this virtual world. Unfortunately, sometimes they immerse too much, but they like it because they are excited about it. But you also have adventure games. You have games that develop logical thinking, not to mention educational games that expand the knowledge of the player, and they can be used in everyday learning. You have sports games that sports fans love, and they can become great sports people, their idols in the game. You also have online games that allow the child to develop language skills, the ability to think strategically, cooperate, show initiative. I can go on listing many advantages. Parents, adults, teachers are not really that keen on understanding the subject, and we, as I said at the beginning, we tend to blame the games for everything that's bad. There's also a goat simulator, a pretty well-known one, actually. Let me read a few comments because they are very interesting. Why parents are negative about computer games. Beata says because they don't know their games. So parents don't know games and we simply object. Aga says because kids lose track of time and they don't have this control over time on the level of adults. I agree, and we can talk about it later, Edita, because games consume a lot of time. It's good to have balance, to have a variety of experiences. Yes, this balance is very important, and that's what I try to do as a dad. Aga says that kids are an easy source of pleasure, and they don't want to do anything else because this is an easy source of pleasure for them. Yes, that's about boosters that bring easy rewards to kids. That's true. Coming back to the offline world, these rewards are hard to come by very often in the real world. So what can we do as adults, parents, teachers? What alternative can we offer to kids, not to deter them from playing, but to participate in games, accompanying kids online, and to offer them an alternative so that kids wouldn't spend a whole day in front of the computer? What can you do? Well, it's a very interesting topic. We could only focus on the topic of games and how they are built, why they are so immersive. But I think we need to focus on the perception of the child, not the adult. Why does a child want to be in this world? I think that's key. And perhaps our worlds can meet this way. The parent would like the child to read books or watch National Geographic or Discovery Channel. And if they were to play games, only educational games would be welcome. An educational game in my time was a very boring kind of game. Perhaps it's changed. And children tend to go into a world that's not actually real. If they want to have a goat, you'd wonder why they want to have a simulator of a goat if they can go to a farm. And right, I think most of all, the world outside of a game is boring for children, or it's sad, or there are no good relations with their parents, with their peers, with their family, brothers and sisters. The world is built in such a way that the child doesn't want to be in this world. And a game is predictable. The child can influence this world, and it's safe. Of course, there are some digital threats, but during this webinar, let's focus on the advantages of games. Let's try to be positive about games. So this world will not harm the child, and it's different to the child going to their peers and being laughed at. In the digital world, it will not happen. And perhaps that's a starting point for understanding why children want to play games. Let me add that they're also looking for approval, for attention. They are also shouting out to the world by playing games. I'm here, notice me. I'm going to play the game all night, looking for your interest, mom or dad. But I want you to ask me why I'm not spending this time with you, why I prefer to be online. Perhaps they're looking for approval from parents, from peers, from colleagues. Perhaps they are excluded in school, and there is no exclusion when they are online. They find people who think in a similar way, who share their interests, and they accept them the way they are. So there may be many reasons, but young people who are not experiencing too much attention, acceptance, and reward, they are assessed negatively, so they turn to the online world, to the game, to find this positive boost from games. They can express themselves, they can establish relationships with people who are like-minded, and it's basically about compensating the deficits in the offline world. Thinking positively, the young people are looking for entertainment, and they're looking to expand their skills, their knowledge. They're looking for adrenaline that games give them. to get stimulated, but they're also looking for places where they can develop their language skills, they can develop their hobbies. I know many young people who are into military affairs, and they play games which require strategy. They can cooperate with other players. And I talk to my students. I work in a special school, so I'm working with kids with learning difficulties. And I asked them, what games do you like to play? And I asked them, they told me what they like to play, but I asked them why they like to play the games. And most of them, and I think it's pretty sad, because some of them, they're basically killing time. They just want to do something, not to be bored. And that's why they are immersing themselves in the virtual world in games. One student said to find friends, and that gave me food for thought, actually. How you have friends at school, but when I come back home, I no longer have friends. I no longer have friends around me. I don't have any brothers or sisters. And online, I have plenty of friends, and it's cool because I can talk to them and I can be with them. And I think that's an area that we should be interested in as parents and teachers, and it gives us food for thought. See how much feedback we're getting from children. So they're going into the online world, not because it's sucking them in, it's because they are getting many good things. It's related to the sadness around them at home. They don't have brothers or sisters, they don't have friends, so they go online. Let's imagine a situation, and I understand because you have many social games that require cooperation as a team. Let's imagine that in this game, suddenly a parent joins this game after 50 minutes and says, you have to finish, because that's what we agreed. And the child gets angry, and I'm siding with the child. I understand why the child is angry, because it's the parent barging into the world where the child wants to finish a game with friends, because the game, say, lasts 60 minutes. And if they don't finish, they can be thrown out from the team. And that's an example for you. I think that's one of the key things that you need to do with your kids. Ask them why you like playing Minecraft or Sims. I did this with my daughter. I asked her, I was quite angry with her because she was playing on a computer, and she responded that for her, games are a place where things happen for the child. When she presses something, it brings about a result. So she wants to have influence. So basically, they are compensating certain deficits. I made a mental note of that, and that's a very important point of reference in my conversations with her. What else can you read from the attitude of the child that keeps going back to the online world on the smartphone or the computer? Anything else you'd like to add to this list, or is it a full set of information and we can push the subject onwards?
I think that we have talked about most of it. It's a good idea to mention children who choose games, and it's a conscious choice because they want to learn strategic thinking or programming, or wants to develop their language skills. I have one of my students with Asperger's who has very good language talent, and he had been learning English individually, only 2 hours of English at school. And he learned very good English just thanks to computer games. And what he loved about computer games was that he was able to communicate with other players in English, and that's how he was able to develop this passion for the language. And that gave me a bit of a headache because I don't speak English. So when I came to the classes with him, when he was angry with me and wanted to tell me how much he hated mathematics, he would switch to English. And I just had to bear whatever he said and carry on. He was a fantastic boy. I was very proud of him when he won nationwide language competitions. He was great. And computer games can develop those skills as well. And maybe subconsciously, children sometimes go online to do things like that, or maybe consciously to learn a language. This has appeared in the comments as well. And also another thing, in addition to languages, is programming, learning basics of software development. And yes, there are a lot of those games. Now, a question that parents very often ask, and maybe also teachers, when we want a child to stop playing computer games, we tell them, stop playing computer games, read a book. And apparently that's better than games. Or go out, walk the dog. That's something I say. I'm not saying I'm perfect, far from it. So basically, the things that you can see behind me, books, many parents believe that is a better choice than a computer game. Is this correct or not? I don't think it's quite right. That's what we wrote about with Mikołaj about in our book, How Not to Lose Your Child in the Net. And he mentioned his experiences when he played computer games a lot as a teenager, and the parents never prevented him from doing that because they saw many positive aspects and they knew how positive the games impacted his development. But in addition to computer games, he also read books because he liked it. And Mikołaj said in the book that when we're adult, we think that children read much less than they used to in the past. And that's not true, because, for example, they are using smartphones or read things online, and apparently they read much more, but they read the things they're interested in. In the past, all this information was not available, the latest news and other things that they are into. These days, they have access to it, so they do read, but they read different things. And also the young people read what they understand in a certain context. In other words, they read things that make sense to them, that relate to something around them. Now, books from the school reading list or the books we suggest to them are not part of this context. They are boring, they are old-fashioned, and they're not attractive to them. And that's why they are more willing to read books that they are closer to and that they understand. And we have to understand that too. So just like books, computer games can teach a child a lot and they can influence their skills. Thanks to computer games, they also learn how to focus. They also get all sorts of experiences. They have to process what is shown in the game, or have to imagine some things, have to plan a strategy of solving a problem, and they learn certain habits as well. They develop such skills as maintaining focus and concentration, or adapting to changing conditions, which is something that happens in games all the time. They learn how to plan, how to control certain events and developments in the game, problem solving. And for example, by playing Minecraft, they learn to write and read. Because before they create anything, they have to read quite extensive instruction manuals to do it. So all of that meshes in with reading books, because games also show certain attitudes and talk about certain values or ideas, concepts. All the things that we care about in a book can also be present in games, and they also allow you to dream about things, to imagine things, fantasize. All of that is perfectly in line with books, I believe. So I think it's a good idea to give the child a choice. If they are learning more from an educational game, then let them develop like that. We should give them choice. We should be giving them the alternative of having books to read. But if the child hasn't been reading so far, and if you ban computer games, that's not going to make them start reading. You can see a lot of paper books behind me, but we've had e-books and audiobooks for many years now. And I know, well, for example, my daughter, she doesn't read books, but she listens to audiobooks for hours on end. So she is consuming book content in a different format. And it's worth appreciating that the child may select a form that they prefer. Now, you have talked about how computer games impact child's development. This is the main topic that we're here for today. So they can be important at different development stages. This is something that I've been very much inspired by in the NASC guidebooks for parents. So this isn't for children, it's for parents. It's 40 pages each. And it's these are guidebooks for parents about the digital world. And I think this is a very good thing, because parents are afraid of the digital world and they need some information about how it works. One of these, by Ms. Witkowska, is about teenagers playing computer games. And what I found that would surprise me was a study that sort of corroborated my feelings that I had that computers are not just evil. Marta quoted research from 20 years prior. The study was about laparoscopy surgeons. So these are the surgeons who use what's basically a robot to enter the human body with a tiny camera and do something inside, carry out the surgery inside. And a lot of accuracy and precision is very important in this. And it turned out that the people who used to play computer games as teenagers did much better and made fewer errors than their colleagues who had not played computer games. And the differences were vast. They were in the order of 37% difference, 47% difference. And this wasn't just one-off. The teams of people who used to play computer games were significantly better. You can see a recording of an interview with the author on TED. She carried out studies, she researched this, and that's what she's talking about in this TED presentation. Now, laparoscopy might not be something we all will do in the future, but there are other jobs that will require the skill that you can get from games. For example, drone pilots. I suppose there will be more and more of them. Unmanned plane operators. These are jobs of the future, I think. We don't know what scale the demand will be, but this will be happening in different industries. Now, this is another example. Our foundation School with Class is a patron of this book as well. It's how do we learn and why do brains learn better than computers, at least so far. That's the subtitle there. A Terminator 2 world is not just around the corner. And one of the quotes in the book is different studies into the brain. And this is not just to do with computer games. So what he says is that studies have shown that if we play computer games, certain processes begin in the brain that stimulate our brain. The brain has to have good reflexes, has to be accurate. You know, in games like Counter-Strike, you're in a sniper mode and you've got to be very accurate. These are the skills that are operating, are being used at an elevated level when playing computer games. So the question was, does anything remain in the brain of that? So does that skill translate into other areas? Can we use it in other areas? For example, maybe it's easier for us to switch between different subjects at school every 45 minutes. And apparently there are studies that show that this is the case. Maybe not always, maybe not everywhere. That's the problem with studies. There are always some exceptions. But yes, there are studies that show that this could be the case. Now, I've prepared this book, one more, The Secret Life of a Teenager's Brain. This is a book, without wanting to read all of it to you, it quotes studies into how children with ADHD were treated with computer games. Computer games help them focus, and it becomes less important when they're focused on a task in a computer game. And again, this isn't just while he or she is playing the game, but it is much more long-lasting. And again, this might just be a computer game, and it's not just special games dedicated to curing ADHD. It's just ordinary games like computer shooters. So even when playing an ordinary game, certain things are being put in order in a brain where these things weren't working quite right. So research shows that games can impact the human brain in a lasting way and in a positive way. So this is conducive to development. And finally, coming back to the author of this book, something that intrigued me in the book was the following. When we talk about games and education, we think about educational games, but they don't have to be used. Research was done into computer games where, for example, your character might die and the level of dopamine and adrenaline is very high when playing these games. So the fact that these games force your brain to be very aware is also a way of focusing. You're better able to focus on a goal that you want to achieve and so on. Over to you, Zyta. Now, I don't think this is simplistic. I think these are very important things, and I think it's a good idea to... Right, so you keep talking, and in the meantime, I'll be posting the links to these studies. I want for you to be able to check them out.
Były zrobione w 2000 roku i słuchajcie...
Let me briefly talk about some research dating back to the year 2000. An example of a game that was hugely popular among researchers is a game that you certainly know about, Tetris. And some study from the year 2000 showed that people suffering from amnesia, by playing Tetris, were getting better. And Tetris had a therapeutic and calming effect. The results were pretty surprising, because in spite of the fact that people with amnesia who played Tetris did not remember the fact that they were playing Tetris, they did not have any memories related to Tetris, but they were able to dream about the game. What is more, they were even getting better in this game, and they were getting ever better results. And the experiment proved that playing Tetris develops human procedural memory. It turns out that that's not the last influence that Tetris has on people who suffer from amnesia. The game was shown to people who've suffered from some trauma, an accident or some other trauma in their life, and they were given Tetris as part of a study. The people would play waiting for examinations or just in their spare time. And what the researchers wanted to establish whether Tetris reinforces memories. And it turns out that the simple game, Tetris, boosted memory in people who've suffered from trauma, from amnesia. So their memories became stronger. The patients, as a result, came back to health faster. They forgot the traumas faster. For example, the trauma of a car accident was alleviated, and they were becoming healthy and strong again. So Tetris has this positive impact on human brain, and it is so because the mechanics of the game, the easy rules of the game, mean that you can get this flow, full relaxation by playing. It's something between satisfaction and euphoria. And this has a conducive effect to us getting better. It's healing for the brain, in other words. As a result, you are alert, but also relaxed at the same time. So even such simple games that you remember from your childhood, you are not enthusiastic about such simple games anymore, but they are useful in a therapeutic process, in the healing process. Let me quote one of the comments. I like it very much. Joanna says, let me say a few words as a teacher of IT. I used to play many games. I spent a lot of time in front of a computer. I played strategic games, and I think playing games is nothing bad, but you have to be sensible. I fully agree, but I wanted to say that we should remember about digital hygiene. We know that you need to develop some habits. You need to be able to break away from the computer. And that's something that kids may have difficulties with. We adults usually are better at managing our time. You can develop, you can learn these skills. So you need to have that in the back of your head. We are talking about the advantages of games today. It's obvious that you should not be playing games 24 hours a day or all night, even if there are advantages to games, but you don't really want your kids playing all the time and not going out to play. One important thing that I wanted to add on the subject about how brain reacts to games. I like a book that's for kids, but I really like the contents. It's a book by Professor Jerzy Vetulani, a famous late neurologist, and it's a book, Alice's Dream, or How the Brain Works. And the content is about Alice being shown around by the brain, inside the brain. And there's a remark about games, and the brain says that Alice, as any child beginning school, you have more neurons than children in kindergarten. 30% of your neurons will not live until you're older. You'll lose the ones that are unemployed. And that's one excerpt. And when I watch my daughters, they would have an open laptop, a smartphone next to it. They're watching something, they're playing at the same time. For me, that's white noise already, but for them, it's normal. And they have many more synapses than we have as adults. And that's a very important piece of information, why kids can multitask while adults not necessarily. You hear that multitasking is a myth, but kids can do it. I don't know why, but let's leave it at that. It's an important piece of information. This is a stage, being a child, where you can develop a human being, you can grow your brain. A worse piece of news, every small child has many neurons responsible for drawing. Most like to color their drawings, and then they switch to computer games. Neurons responsible for drawing go unemployed and die. If the child likes to continue to draw, the neurons remain active, and the child can grow into an artist or a painter. And children who opt for computer games will have specialized neurons related to computer games. So basically, it's about making a conscious decision about what you want to specialize in. Like with sculpture, you shed some things to create a sculpture. Zyta, you wanted to intervene? No, I'm listening carefully what you're saying. Let me just add something. As teachers and parents, we often talk about future-proofing of skills. It would be great if we taught our children to solve problems, to cooperate, to think logically, analytically. But does the school and we as parents, do we develop these skills? Not necessarily, but thanks to games, you can actually develop all these skills. So I think that's an aspect, that's a context where games can be seen positively, in a positive way, because games not only create the right social attitudes, they teach you to cooperate with others. Not only do they teach you initiative, but they also help you solving problems, and they teach you to achieve your or shared goals, because often kids need to cooperate in games, and they really like this aspect of playing where they can agree joint strategies. And all these are competences of the future. I was looking for a book on the shelf behind me, but I can't find it. It's a book about the competences of the future. And this book actually says what we should be focusing on right now, because our kids should already be masters of these skills. We are talking currently about digital skills as skills of the future, but it's basically present skills. You already need these skills to be able to function in this world. Before I pass the floor to you, Marcin, I have in front of me this book, Jordan Shapiro, A New Digital Childhood, a fantastic book. I'm fascinated with it. You can see that I have many pieces of paper. I'm making notes as I'm reading it. I'm scribbling in the book every now and then, because when I'm looking for answers, I will reach for the book. And if I marked something, it means that it's a valuable thought. And it means that it's important to me. And in the context of games and us sticking to what we know as parents and teachers, we are afraid of changes. Let me quote Shapiro here, who is talking about changes that are unavoidable. You cannot avoid changes, even though they can be terrifying. Don't stick to what you know. Children need adults who can help them grasp the world around them, that for kids is something they don't understand. In the context of new challenges, new technologies, and digital games, I think that's something that is worth mentioning. Let's not stick to our comfort zone. Let's give ourselves an opportunity to find out, to learn about what our kids are playing with. They're spending a lot of time playing games, and if they are spending a lot of time, it means that it's important for them. It's helping them, it's satisfying some needs. So rather than negating, it's better to accompany the kids online, to act as guides and guardians when they're playing digital games. Well, I like one of the comments from Dorota. These days, children live in this augmented reality. This is something that's strange to us, but for them it's normal. It's their reality. It's not an artificial world for them. There are humans, there are people, there are peers online. It's not an artificial world, you're saying, Marcin. There are peers, friends with whom they can establish relations. Certainly you have experiences as a dad, or maybe you talk to teachers, educators, that the key objection towards games is that children escape the real world. They don't have contacts with their peers, so they don't go into relations, they don't have friends, they don't have colleagues anymore. They are detached from reality. Would you agree, Marcin, with this statement? Or do you think that the virtual world, games, can offer this space to children where they can establish relations, they can make friends, they can look and find colleagues online? Well, this is the kind of a perception that is foreign to us, because we go back to the games from the 1990s or early 2000s, and the networking factor was not that important. Games were not online multiplayer games back then. Right now, this networking factor is much more visible. I will finish here and we'll start a Q&A session very soon. If you have any questions, put your questions on the chat. Zyta is an expert in the online world and children. I have this book as well. This is a book authored by Zyta. So this networking factor, it's very important. Let me refer to, let me mention Dawid Łasiński, Pan Belfer, that's his nickname. I think he does it publicly on YouTube. So he does these live events with games where he's playing something, and it's basically streamed online. You can join this streaming event and people talk. Kids, usually kids are talking about what they are watching, not just comments about the game itself, but in these conversations, they would talk about how bad the world is to them. They open up to others. They express their sadness, and it's all happening because he is playing a game. He's walking around the castle, and on the chat, teenagers are opening up to him. And then the chat disappears. The stream is not recorded. You cannot play it back. That's one of the advantages. That's why kids open up, because it's safe for them, because no one will use this against them. So I figured that this network factor and David's experience suggests that the game can be space. Let me make a risky statement. Perhaps you can be yourself when playing a game. You no longer have to wear a mask as you do sometimes in a group of peers. And during a game, you can be what you want to be. And what I want to be is true. Of course, I can prefer to be someone I will never be, a warrior with a huge sword. But it's basically about expressing my needs. I may be ashamed of saying it aloud that I want to be a warrior with a big sword. People can laugh at this if I make it in a real life, but there's something behind it. So games as a space for expressing yourself. Yes, and I agree.
Right, so what I wanted to add is a game that I've heard about. Not sure if you know it. It's a game that you either play alone or with a partner. And the idea is that the child learns that his or her parents want to get a divorce. And they want the parents to stay together very much. So the child is wondering what to do in order to change the parents' mind. And he or she starts crying. These tears fall on some dolls, and the dolls become real people solving tasks and making the parents cooperate with each other and solve problems together in order to stay together. My students told me about this game. They said it was fantastic, that many young people played it, and that apparently it was a very popular game. So I was wondering why an apparently simple game like this becomes so popular. And like you said, maybe this is some sort of a dream that hasn't come true, or something that the children would like to achieve, but they can't in real life because parents may have divorced. So maybe escaping reality into the game means that these dreams of having a full family are expressed through this game. So what I'm driving at is that this is some sort of a escape route for children to play games, to talk about certain emotions that they can't talk to their parents or friends about because they are embarrassed. But by projecting their emotions onto the game, they can perhaps heal a broken heart. And in one of the conferences, he talked about it, and he said that he met kids who play these games online with him, and then did some fantastic things because they supported each other, they solved problems, they talked about how you can use different apps, and they supported each other. And at the end of it, they appeared at a NASC conference, and NASC asked him to invite these virtual friends of his to this event. And it was a fantastic thing. And this is another way of showing that this virtual reality, the virtual space that we think is very cold and impersonal and lacking emotions, doesn't need to be like that. We can meet fantastic, inspiring people, and we can make new friendships online as well. We have a comment from Joanna here who says that in her school days, people used chats or IRCs to get to know each other, and this is a space to get to know other people, and real friendships emerge. So she, in a way, corroborates what you have just said. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the very last opportunity to ask some questions, a very final question. And before we get a question, I would like to recommend some TED speeches to you. But before I do, I've been thinking about peer-to-peer relations. Do you remember Chatteria? And that was a place where you could meet someone, you wouldn't approach them in the street, but you could talk to a stranger using gadu-gadu communicator or Chatteria. And if you had some interpersonal barriers, it was easier to overcome them online. It's like, when you go to a party and you're embarrassed to talk to someone you don't know. So the internet makes it easier for that ice breaking to happen. Right. I'll be drawing to a close unless you've got something else to say to wrap it up, Zyta. No, I would like to hear your conclusions about this. So yes, let me wait for your conclusion and then I'll comment on it. Let me enhance reality now. I like this phrase. The first link I would like to give you is from Daphne Bavelier. And this is the study that we've talked about of how games impact the development of the brain. And she confirmed that in her studies. So this is the first link that I'm leaving on Facebook. Now, the second thing is a broader topic. It's about the use of modern technologies in not really the process of teaching children, but rather the process of learning by children. A researcher has installed something like a cash machine in the wall of a school in a poor area. So it was a computer which was wall mounted. The children had no idea what it was. There was no manual, but it only took them a very short time before they learned how that worked, and they started looking for information online about some projects they had. So the computer was used by them as a tool to help arrange the world around them. That's one of the best things that show how much wisdom there is in children, how easily they are able to use tools to do what they want. So maybe sometimes we should stop short before saying, turn that computer off. Because maybe when the child is playing something that to us seems like a waste of time, is developing a very important competence that they might find useful in 5 or 10 or 15 years, or maybe at university. So I'm posting these two links. Our foundation, School with Class, has also posted something, and Hubert is also present. Now, let me just add one thing. I've posted a link as well. This is a study from NASC that we mentioned. I think this particular publication is very good for parents, and maybe we can conclude by mentioning some hints and ideas of how to provide the best experience to children when they play games. We know that games help develop the potential of every child, but parents and teachers have to make sure that the children stay safe. So it's a good idea to have some principles and some rules about, for example, how much time the child can play the games. If we have some guidelines and if we stick to them, then the child will also comply. But if we allow the child to play games all the time, she will do it, all day and all night long. So yes, we need to have some rules or some limits or some boundaries to make sure that they don't play all the time. And we should provide them with some alternatives. And if we set rules, we should respect them, first of all. A good idea to stop children from playing all the time is to define specific days or hours during the day when the child can play computer games. And if we know that the child's not respecting these rules, then a good idea is maybe to keep them close to us, maybe to be in the same room as we are. Maybe we should spend more time with the child to also be able to tell what he or she is playing. And we should also be interested in what games they are playing. Are these games good for their age and at the development stage? And before we buy a computer game to a child, again, make sure this game is good for this particular age bracket and that the content in it is appropriate. We should also watch our children to make sure that no worrying behaviors appear. Now, there's the European game assessment system, which was designed to help parents make decisions about computer games. It's called PEGI, P-E-G-I. So use that system to learn something about the game before you buy it. Yes, I fully agree. And one last comment from me. You mentioned having an alternative. If I understand you correctly, it's for the child when he or she stops playing the game, not to have just gray, drab reality around them, because then they won't want to leave the game. So we should have some proposals for the children, proposals that are interesting for the children. I believe in being in touch with your child and talking to them, asking, why do you play this game? What do you like about it? And even if it's not very scientific, the child might say, I feel good when playing. And that might mean maybe he or she feels bad elsewhere. A game can be a test that tells us what the children are good at and what they don't feel comfortable with. Games are just a tool. They shouldn't be treated like enemies. It's a tool that can be used in a good or a bad way. So we should be trying to use this tool in a good way for ourselves as parents, teachers, educators. And relationships are very important. If there are problems with the relationships, whether it's a big tragedy or just something small, if there is a problem in the relationships, that is another hurdle on the way to solving a problem. So if we start our conversation by saying, you're banned from playing computer for a week, then he or she will not want to talk to us for a week. So there are different ways of solving a problem. And finally, there are these rules about how long they can play or be online. I believe that this should be set through a conversation with the child. It's not like the World Health Organization suggests something, because this is not an argument that the child will understand. But maybe you could say that, for example, as your parent, I can see that you need an hour and a half, for example, because it's Minecraft and it needs more time to build something. So let's have 1 hour and a half, and then you might take a break and we'll do something together. We might cook dinner together or make some pizza together. It's also about the trust and safety. If the child knows that their relationships with the people around them are good, if the game makes them feel bad, they will know that they always come to the parents and talk to them. But if the child knows we are against games, they will worry that if he or she tells us about this bad experience in the game, we will ban them from playing and lock the computer up, and that's the worst thing ever. Hubert, you need to cut us off because we can carry on for 3 hours. Yes, I didn't want to interrupt you because that was, in a nutshell, some best practices for children in terms of what to do and what not to do. So I liked it very much. Now, one last thing that I would like to emphasize. Both Marcin and Zyta mentioned ways and means of what to do when there is too much time spent playing the computer games. But what if we reverse this question, and when do we turn on the computer if our child doesn't like computer games? We have a question in chat. My child doesn't like computer games. How can I encourage them to play games, especially those in English, to make him or her learn? So it's a reverse question. Not all children have to like games. They might have a completely different point of view. They might be learning a foreign language anyway. Now, if you sit at the computer with your child together, if you play a computer game together for the first time, if we believe it's a nice educational game that teaches English, for example, then that will be great. Children like to follow an example and learn through repeating an example. It's like when you say, don't use your phone so much, but you are using your phone all the time, then the child will rebel because they want to copy your behavior. But if you show that a computer game can be fascinating and good for their development, if you sit at the computer with the child and play together, then I'm sure the child will be more happy to play them. Maybe something that would attract them would be this communal character of the game. He or she might see that there are other peers in the game and that the game is just yet another tool for communication with the peers. Now, I don't think every child must play computer games. This is all about choice. Just like not every child has to read books. It would be nice, but it's not a tragedy if they don't. Maybe they will start reading books when they graduate from university, and then they will see that it's a nice thing to do. So there is time for everything. You know, it's sort of like with children, not everyone has to have children and not every child has to play computer games. So let's not overdo this. But it's a good idea to show it to children if we want them to do it. They will also be encouraged by us and maybe they will try it. It's sort of like with tabletop games or board games. I've heard a mom say, I'd never buy these games because my child doesn't like them. I said, what games do you have at home? She said, well, we don't have any because she doesn't like to play. But maybe if there are no games at home, maybe she doesn't like them because she's never had a chance to play them. Chess is a board game. All right. Once again, let me encourage everyone to read Marcin's article about how computer games improve children's learning. This article was the inspiration behind having this meeting, because we wanted to show the positive side of computer games. We wanted to show that they are a good tool to educate, and a lot of positive things can stem from them. Let me thank all of you for all the comments that you've shared, and also your memories about your computer gaming times, either in childhood or maybe just recently. So the webinar will be available online on our website, szkołazklasą.pl. You have the links in chat, so it's a good idea to save them. And a very warm welcome to Zyta and Marcin. Hopefully, our foundation will be able to continue this mission of presenting computer games as a positive and good tool. Thank you for inviting me. Thanks to Marcin and Hubert. It was a pleasure. Thank you. And since I'm a fan of new technology, I have to say this is the direction that the world is going in. In spite of trying to demonize these things, let's make these computer games our friends, not foes. Thank you very much, and have a great evening, or maybe day if you're watching this later. And see you soon.